I believe with all my heart that there are actually two aspects of communications. There's the art of communication and there's the science of communication. The problem that we usually run into is that we rush to the science part and we talk about what we say and we talk about the intricacies of that and the details of that, but we rush past the most important part, and that is the art of communication. It constitutes 90% of your influence, your impact, or your persuasion on other people. It's basically how you say what you say. Science is what you say, but how you say it, the spirit or the mood behind your words, makes all the difference in the world. What do I mean by that? Let me illustrate that by what I call the communications rocket. Let's assume that there's a rocket at Cape Kennedy and it's getting ready to fire. It has to have a lot of fuel, a lot of power to get that off the ground. At the top of the rocket is a payload. It's why you're shooting the rocket up into orbit in the first place. Let's call that, from a communication standpoint, the message. Those are the words. Let's call it the verbal, if you will. It's why you're actually communicating, to get that message across. But underneath that, to get it off and out of gravitational pull of 1 million messages a year that we normally hear, how do you make that compelling, intriguing, and riveting? How do you do it? If the top of the rocket is what we call logos, or the content, the fuel that drives that rocket is the pathos and the ethos. It's the compassion and it's the character that will get that payload into orbit. Now, if you were to take all three of those ingredients, your verbal and what I would call the vocal and the visual, and you were to line those up, because ethos and pathos can best be seen in the vocal and the visual. Vocal meaning tone of voice, visual meaning body language or physiology. If you were to line all those up, verbal, vocal, and visual, to constitute 100% of believability, how would you separate those three in terms of percentages? How would you do that? Most people would say the words constitute the most. Wrong. Words, the payload itself, is about 7% of the communication impact. 93% comes from the fuel, or the ethos and the pathos, the character and the compassion. In fact, 7% in words, 37% in tone of voice, 56% in body language. All of that must line up, or to be congruent, in order to be persuasive and get the message into orbit. Now here's the deal. Once that rocket jettisons and the payload continues on, out of gravitational pull, once that payload connects into orbit, or by analogy, your message connects with your listener, that 7% then becomes 100%. Don't ever underestimate the power of character and compassion in getting your message across. People want to see that you really care, that they get it. The greatest statement I've heard about a message that I've ever given is that I meant what I said because I mean what the content is really all about. He said it like he meant it, and he believed it like he means it. You have to be believed in order to be heard.